You're going to start this session by coming to lay down on your back. And you could have your legs straight if you wanted to, or bring them into a bent position. Either way, our initial setup is going to involve this idea of dropping the bones of you into the floor. And so you may become aware of your breath, enabling you to do that. Using the exhale and just noticing what really comes to mind regarding your contact. So we have this two ideas that we can call upon here. This feeling that the floor is absorbing the landmarks, and of course supporting the landmarks, and either way you do get a sense of the bonier parts of your body. You might choose to set up with a small cushion behind your head. That's my choice today, and what I find it enables is just brings about an increase of connection of my lower back ribs into the floor. And so as you scan, it might be that you move the body part, whether that's starting at the top of the body, moving the head, shoulder blades, again, any rib contact you might feel. And then continuing to get a sense without force of what's next in connection with the floor for you. Is it more the lower back area, or do you feel actually when you move the pelvis around in various different directions, whether it is the weight of the landmark of the pelvis? And then of course you get to your feet, and perhaps you want to really squeeze the toes tightly together, or you even spread the toes. I've chosen to be sock free for this moment, and then just resting the feet down and picking up on all of that. Hands are going to come to the ribs here. And you're just going to take note initially, in a pause, in a time of quiet, of what sort of breath pattern is happening for you as you're settling. So do you feel the pushback of the inflation of the ribs at all? Do you notice it more through the fingertip area, more through that abdomen, rise and fall? What do you naturally notice? And then looking to create some impact everywhere. Heels of hands, whatever they're touching, whether it's more bony ribs or fingertips, whether it's more sort of fleshy abdomen. But breathing in through the nose. And breathing out through the mouth. Now, wherever you get to with this, with the length of your breath pattern, you're going to look to start to add in some movement. And you could keep the hands here if that were really comfortable for you, or bring them down beside you. But we're looking to attach some pelvic tilt towards and away from the ribs here. And so the next time for you, you were taking the breath out, you are simply going to send some more weight towards the top end of the sacrum. You may feel the lower back connect with the mat a little more, and as you take your next breath in, you'll roll from the top through the middle of the sacrum and head towards the tailbone end. And so even whilst there are two things to consider here, already moving with this idea of the breath guiding the direction, we're still looking to work with sort of low intensity, very little effort. Just allowing the pelvis to move as slowly and freely as it can between these two markers. And perhaps you notice there is a bias as you're moving. Maybe you feel there's a little bit more weight to the right side of the pelvis or to the left. But it does, of course, mean that rhythmically you are moving according to your own breath, and therefore it's going to be very individual to you. Notice the other areas of the torso, those that perhaps are changing relevant to the pelvis movement, relative to the breath pattern that you've managed to sustain throughout. And then settle the pelvis somewhere where it feels like it's in the middle, but it's in a comfortable place. So you look at finding the center of those 2 points. But of course, does it feel comfortable where you've rested? We're then looking to rock the pelvis in a side-to-side way, where the center of the pelvis acts as the center point of what could be described as a seesaw. And so from that center point, your opposing pelvic halves are moving in opposite directions. When you're looking at breath pattern, and really useful if you're moving quite quickly now to consider more of a formal breath pattern, but when you're looking at the breath pattern, you could choose whether you're taking the breath out as you drop on one side, whether there's a pause there, or whether you just like to transfer through on your next inhale. And you could probably gauge that based on what you notice in the torso again. So as I head to a right-sided tilt, right side of the pelvis is down, left side is lifted, there's a little bit more reluctance for the ribs there to follow suit. And so I'm going to opt for, at that moment, breath out. And then find myself taking a breath in as I head to the opposite side. And there's no rule book here, so you could absolutely switch it up according to your own experience. Settle the pelvis once more where it finds something that feels like the middle, although of course that middle point might be new and refined in comparison to how it was when you first laid down. And that's going to be your beginning and ending position, your beginning and ending relationship with the ground as you start to move into bridging. And so you'll stand into your feet and hover your pelvis, and then opt to begin to take that tip of the pelvis towards the ribs. Now, as you do so, the tail end starts to lift, and with that, it's taking the sacrum with it. So the sacrum, the middle bone of the pelvis, is also sending itself upwards. There's this idea too that the low back ribs have moved like a passing elevator in a downwards direction. You'll take a breath in here. And as you breathe out, soften. Head down the mat. Widen through the sit bones as you land to go again. Remember, if it's your own individual breath pattern, you're not necessarily moving in time with the cues, but you can pick them up here and there. So as you're standing into the feet and you're sending the sacrum upwards, you're taking a breath in there. Notice how that changes your rib cage size, particularly into the back of the body. And you're utilizing the pelvic tilts here, both on the way up as well as on the way down. So of course you've got your tilting of your pelvis towards the rib cage here, and as you're coming down, there's this idea that you're unraveling that. You're taking the pelvis in the direction away from the ribs to find that middle point before you go again. As you're up at the top here, we're going to add in the arms of last week. And so you take your breath in just as you did before, fingertips float to the ceiling. The chest feels like it falls away from the fingertips almost as soon as they find the ceiling point. And then you're arcing back with the arms. You've got two options: either reverse your arm arcs here or simply open your arms out to the side. Maybe that's a question of how the shoulders feel, how the front of the chest feels as an initial movement. Standing down and hovering. Keep that hover quite low, because then as you begin to tip towards the ribs, you get the ripple effect of what happens through the low back ribs. They're also gently pushing backwards. You'll feel a firmer contact with those against the ground initially. Fingertips to the ceiling. There's I'm implying real soft fingertips at that point so that I can sense the middle of the body falling back. And then how the shoulder blades doing today with the arm arc? How do they feel about being opened out to the side and brought all the way back down beside you? We've got one more of these. Notice here, the ribs are pushing into the mat. They also feel like they're going up the mat just as you find your feet and maintain that foot contact. Keep the pelvis down next and head into some simple arm arcs without the articulation through the spine, where you're going to simply arc them upwards and backwards, but get a sense of what impact that has on the side of the body, armpits. If it's helpful for you to have the head slightly raised here, maybe at brings you more in tune with the low back ribs, then do so. Maybe it helps free the shoulder blades from the floor slightly so you get more of an obvious freedom through the blades. Last one here. Feet can come together. Arms are going to move away from the body just to give you some room there. And then as you take a breath out here, just allow the legs to fall to one side. Be aware of the shoulder blade connection with the floor. You could take an inhale to return if the breath out is really helpful as you travel over to the opposite side. You might notice that I'm showing the soles of the feet, both of them, with one foot resting on top of the other. Of course, if you prefer to use the hips a little bit more, sort of prepping them for rotating inwards and outwards a fraction more than this, then of course you could have your feet a little wider for this side to side variation. The next time your knees are swaying towards the screen here, you're going to use that weight and roll yourself onto your side. Grab a thick towel rolled up, or your cushions, and bring those underneath the side of the head. The feet are going to still be stacked, so that's going to help really with your organisation. And then when you're ready to start to rotate here once more, we're rotating through the upper body. Gaze is looking at the hand. Collarbone wide. Tune into the position of the shoulder blade of this moving arm here. So the further around you come with the gaze and the arm, could you imagine the shoulder blade to be heavy and falling away from the ribs just towards the end there? It's as if it drops into your clothing a little heavier. And that heaviness is really generated by it being more directly parallel with the floor. Once you're back and in your closed position, over onto the other side, we will layer the movement in the same way we did on the first side. So really just looking at an organised body as your initial focus. following your hand. And then tuning into the shoulder blade, if you haven't begun to add in that as a thought. So it's here, collarbone continues to be wide, sort of notice the direction of the shoulder blade. Could it feel like it's falling directly downwards, away from the rib cage at that point? And feel free to chunk the breath there. If it works to pause, take another inhale, just to help wind you around the corner a little bit more. Sometimes the breath can escape you quite quickly out of nowhere, and you might find that you didn't quite rotate as much as you would have liked to. So here you are back on your back. Checking in with the bones of you. It's a little bit more obvious the more you do it, having had some motion as well. Interlace the fingers and they're going to come behind your head. As you breathe out, lowering your gaze. Back ribs push back for you to curl up, and then inhaling to lay yourself down. When you curl up, your next time you're going to reach forwards and hold onto the legs. You widen through the elbows just to deepen that front body. Hands come back behind the head and then unravel to lay yourself down. Exhaling to curl up. Breathing in as you reach and hold. Breathing out to draw yourself higher, and then holding on to that as you take the hands back behind your head to lay down. And next time you curl up, you're going to stay up. And so we'll reach and hold and maintain the chest lift position. Elbows will widen to bring you up higher, but you'll also draw your feet towards the pelvis. And imagine the shins are light to lift there. Feet are relaxed, taking a breath in. As you breathe out then, stay connected, hands and thighs, and drop the thighs into the hands to take you up for that first rolling up movement. And then from seated, perhaps you want to add in the use of a cushion to begin with. Feet are going to go down and forwards, guiding the pelvis into that initial tilting action we did, rolling through the spine. And you can think bridging there in terms of your direct root. Breathing out here. Rolling through to bring you up. we're taking one more assisted roll up here, and in the middle of the assisted roll up, we're going to look at single leg stretch. And so the feet will push down and forwards. You've got this tilting action to bring you onto your back. You're going to pause, and perhaps it will feel a little bit high in your curl up to start off with. See whether you can find what would be 100 for your shape, that same chest lift shape we did. So low ribs are pushing down into the mat to give you that sense of lift. Up and over. Draw one knee into your chest. Find your single leg stretch position, and then taking a breath in as you switch and a breath out as you switch. Now this is the middle of an assisted roll up. So the next time you draw your knees in, find the height once more with the elbow width. And as you breathe out, send the feet downwards and roll yourself back up to your starting position. And if you used a cushion for those initial stages, you could take the cushion away and go for that last moment by coming onto your side and bringing yourself all the way up. We're going to head into spine stretch. Go a little wider with your feet today, and maybe have some softness through the knees. Arms are going to go out in front of you. If you move around on the sit bones, a little bit how you did at the beginning of the session, moving the head, moving the ribs, to give you some info there as to actually where have I settled. And then breathing out to lower the gaze. There is a feeling of up and over forwards, drawing the front ribs in, and then inhaling to bring you back up to your starting position. And so I'm being cautious that I listen to the sensations, and perhaps I'm just getting to a place where it feels a little restricted here and there, and then slowly coming out of it. And perhaps it then gives a little for you next time. Last one. Be a similar movement like that towards the end of the roll up. And again, your choice as to whether you'd start the motion with some cushioning behind you. Maybe you even reach for your band. We'll take the downward phase. Feet have come to a more narrow position. And then there's this sense of sending the legs away from you as the pelvis also tips and moves away from the legs. There's an arm arc here. And then we're back and we're diving up and over. From here, unravel yourself. How would it feel to take the arms into an arm arc but have you more on a diagonal? could absolutely bend your knees, and you might notice the change in the shape of the spine in doing so before you bring yourself back up to your starting position. Now, when you start to roll down from here, lower the arms so that they come back to perhaps where they might ordinarily be. Of course, you might be using your band throughout, in which case the hinge won't be added in today. Keep turning the front ribs in there, bringing themselves up and over. Now you take that very familiar spine stretch shape and then change the position of the pelvis, reaching the arms forward, bend the knees just to help you out before you end up back where you started. And then arms are lowering down from there. The last one. Finishing with a final hinge. Notice the sit bones. Notice the length. Soften the knees if you need to lift. And then relax the arms back down again. Heading into a little bit of Mermaid. We're going to do a similar Mermaid to what we did in last week's video with both directions. So bringing yourself raised with the pelvis if that's helpful for you. We're going to look at left leg in front and right leg behind initially. Finding that foot tucked in at the back, how's that feel? Does it enable the sit bones once more to find themselves? And then when you're ready, you'll be lifting the right arm and taking yourself up and over to the side here, just as we did with the spine stretch. Could it be continuous movement here? Where you might look like you're moving really slowly, but actually there isn't a pause. We've got one more on this side. And you can bring yourself back to center. Switch the legs round. I'd probably stick with the block if you used it for your first side. So sort of know yourself. That's nice to put a little bit of rocking in. So the knee that's to the side, the foot that's behind, it's that leg, as you might have experienced from time to time, that can get a little bit of cramp in it. So just sort of teasing it into place as opposed to putting it there and making it stay. So you'll be lifting your left arm to begin with on this side, to take yourself up and over to the right, and then finding yourself through the center once more, still reaching up. Sort of notice the delicacy really in the approach, that there's calmness in the movement, there's calmness in the breath. And there's continuous movement. Last one. And then again relaxing the arm down. Any props you might have used there can come away. Maybe you save your small cushion for coming onto your front now, or just have it close. It might be something that you quite like for supporting your forehead. Otherwise, we're laying down and we're going to look at single leg extensions into prone heel beats. So that will have you coming to lay on your front, as you would know. The head is going to be resting on the hands. They will act as a cushion there. And then walking the legs away from the pelvis as an initial movement. And so pelvis pushes down into the floor, and you're reaching one leg long. Maybe it feels like it wants to hover, maybe it doesn't. It returns. Pelvis pushes down, reaching one leg long. There's a quietness for the rest of your torso. So just picking up on that. How's the lower back doing? Maybe there's a little bit of rocking side to side, whether that involves the whole torso or just the pelvis. So how centered can you remain? It's like your dead bug equivalent, laying on your back. How centered can you remain whilst the legs are moving in different directions? And then from here, pushing the pelvis down into the floor and reaching both legs long. Again, watch the lower back area. What are your sensations from the front? There's a little bit of rotation out now. That's coming right from the top of the thigh bones. And if it's easier for you to find your heels, you can flex your ankles here and start to come into some heel beats. And so the heels are beating against each other. Now you could think about the movement being larger and coming from the very tops of the thighs. How does that change your rhythm? Makes it slower. Or you could think about the heel sound completely. Pause. If you flex, go back to your pointed position, back into parallel, and then lower yourself down from there. Heading into Scarecrow, so upper body moves into its goalpost position, and this might be where you choose to have your cushion. Now in goalpost, remember that the forearms, the hands and the elbows, they're going to be straight, parallel with the edges of your mat. They're not on the mat, they will of course be on the floor. And so what we've got is some rotation outwards of the tops of the arms, elbows pushing down into the floor, and a hover of the hands to return them back down again. Now, as I mentioned, head could be resting down on a cushion, or you could be holding your head up If it's super, super challenging, maybe you want to obviously lift the head higher. Now, perhaps then that brings your spine into a little bit of extension, but it also might help you connect in with the elbows pushing down and the place at which you're rotating from. You could then keep with the arm movement, but lower the head back down again and notice whether your body is able to work for that same range, which is challenging. The next time you hover your hands, you're also going to hover your elbows. But the idea is that the hands will always be higher than the elbows. Wherever your starting point is it possible to take a breath in and extend some more through the spine, crown of the head reaching long? The body then returns back to where it started. So it might not travel far if you already started high. It might come all the way back to the cushion if that was your starting point. You then bring the elbows down to the mat, followed by the palms, and you repeat. So where's your starting point? Elbows pushed down, upper arms rotating outwards for the hands to hover. Can the hands keep that height above the elbow as the elbows also come off the floor? Take a breath in. Now here, start to add in, there's a reach of the fingers forwards and away, heavy through the legs. Elbows widen for you to return. Can you find your hands higher than your elbows? Spine returns. Where did you start? Elbows return, hands return. We go again. Hands hover. Elbows hover. Spine lengthens. Arms slowly reach long and away from you. Elbows draw back. Collarbones widening. Be in your blades there. Head lowers. Elbows lower. Hands lower. We've got one more of these. As your arms rotate, you'll notice the elbows push down into the floor and then the elbows hover. Inhale to bring yourself up. Extend. Elbows widen. Spine returns. Elbows return. Hands return. Bring the hands in so they're beside the body now. Take a breath in. As you lengthen, you're going to widen through the chest and come up into a mini swan. As you inhale, you'll return yourself all the way back down again. Exhaling, lengthen. Widen. Find your shoulder blades. They're both pulling back now. So remember book openings, where the blades were dropping away from the ribs. We're using gravity a little there. Now you're pulling the blades back into your clothing. Of course, the chest has to widen first. Now, could this grow by adding in a breath in, continuing to monitor the gaze and the position of the head, and then widening through the chest, pulling yourself back between the shoulders to head back down again. Sternum through the arms. Breath out. Last one. And back down you come. From here, push yourself up into a child's pose. Knees and feet together, rounded through the spine. And taking your time, we are heading up into a standing position. I'm going to be upright. Maybe it works best for you to take a step up from here. Maybe you're more comfortable coming into more of a crouched position and perhaps taking a reverse roll up to bring yourself up. Once you're up, we're looking at the spread of the toes and the use of the feet in our heel raises. Find yourself on your feet. Maybe you choose to find yourself in a firmer surface. Noticing that. And then when you're ready, sending the balls of the feet down into the floor. There is a shift here of the whole of the body before the heels start to take you upwards. And then of course lowering down, heels reaching back and away from you to land. And you could hold on to something here if it helped you. Long toes, so that they're not only spread, but they've also got a feeling of length about them. And just holding on to those sensations of being right up there, of picking up on where is the strength and the power coming from. What do you notice about your body? Because you want to get a sense of that even in your plank position. So we're definitely using the legs. And so roll down is where we're coming to next, lowering the gaze. Turning the rib cage in, a feeling of going up and over as you head down. Knees can be soft here. Really depends on your experience and what you notice en route. Definitely play it by ear if you want to. And then of course we're heading out into plank and we're searching for that same use of the legs we just had. Spread toes, long toes. How do they feel here? Heels back and down as you walk back to your feet. Take a moment to hang, whether you choose straight or bent legs. Before you go again. Spine stretch, loose arms, heel raise, lower body. One more. How was it? Well done, everyone. Take care.